That's an interesting question. I think, there's this idea that athletes are unidimensional. And sometimes I understand that because when you're focusing all of your time and energy on one thing, it's really hard to have balance. But, you know, I want the athletes' stories to be told because there's so much more depth to them than I think sometimes is seen at first. I think, there's an interesting line between professional sports and amateur. So sometimes,
Hmm.
yeah, that, we're watching these athletes compete at the Olympics right now, and the idea that they're as supported, that they have the resources, that, yeah, I think it's underestimated just what it takes as far as, the amount of work, the team around you. It's so, as I mentioned earlier, all encompassing. And I think that gets muddied, because every 2 years we love to tune in and we love to see these athletes strive and perform to be their best. But sometimes I think what we're lacking in the middle there is the support, and how do we rally around athletes in that sense. So I think there are some misconceptions around what is available to amateur athletes. How about you? How do you answer that?
Ooh, I'd honestly say the same thing. I'd say like a big thing in our team we were really pushing for was like we're more than just athletes. I think, particularly for myself, a lot of my involvements outside of sport is very much immersed in community and doing a lot of advocacy around, BIPOC folks, so Black, Indigenous people of color, people who are unhoused, women in sport, and just people that are oftentimes, ignored within the grand scheme of society. A lot of my engagements is because I realize that I'm very privileged. I'm able to travel the world, be in spaces that, a lot of people, aren't in. And I think it's important that whenever I come into the sporting world, that I do remember those that have elevated me to be where I'm in that space. And when I think about especially when the pandemic happened, at that point we didn't know if the Olympics was going to happen. We didn't know what was going to happen. And what I did, I was working at a hotel. And that's the thing we talk about. Like, people don't know that some athletes have to work because, funding sometimes is tough. So I was also working at a hotel, and that hotel became temporary housing for unhoused folks. So seeing that lens shift where I was, crying about my Olympic dream potentially not happening, I see that people who live 50 minutes away from me may not have food, may not have the supports and adequate things to help them live and survive. So for me, it was tuning in and checking in with the local community, with the Indigenous community, with my teammates. Oh my goodness, my teammates, my people. They really, man, all the Zoom chats that, oh man, it was so beautiful to have community. And that's why I make sure that in any space I go to that I come with it. I come with my community, and for people to remember that, yes, you see us play, yes, there's an athlete, there's all these things, but we have to remember that, we're humans first. If you
Yeah.
want to see us play, you have to see us, you have to see how we move, how we can articulate ourselves, how we express ourselves, and sports is oftentimes an avenue for us to show up and be us. So yeah.
Yeah. What a beautiful way to leverage the platform you've been given that you have so rightfully earned. And I think that is incredible. What perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I think the perspective is that's why, like, literally when I was at the Olympics, I was just like there's just greats around me. Like, I was just like, there's like Team Jamaica walking by, Andre
Yeah.
DeGrasse is just, I was like, whoa, this is like cool. This is it was just awesome to take everything in and just remember that I get to take all these experiences and bring it back,
Yeah.
and that's what's awesome about all of it.
Amazing.
Um, so let's talk about ambition. What does that word mean to you?
I think if someone were to ask me to define myself in one word, it would probably be ambitious. It's the driving force in every part of my life, and it always has been. It's just this fire that burns deeply within me. Um, I'm obsessed with improving and getting better. And in whatever space that is, it was, on the ice for so much of my life, but I just want to be the very best person I can be, and whatever kind of new challenge or task I take on. I'm driven by that. And that is, a great motivator for sure. And I think it's been, something that I've been able to rely on because I can't turn it off. But I also think that with ambition comes this ability to be strategic,
Mhm.
because you have to be able to analyze opportunities and then selectively choose what you aim for, and what delve into fully. And that's been kind of fun to navigate, especially post skating.
Mhm. Mhm.
Hmm. How about you? Tell me about,
Ambition.
and coming out of the Olympics. Do you feel, on the heels of that you're already looking ahead? As athletes, we're just forward and future thinking, sometimes to our detriment. But do you feel any different now that you're officially an Olympian?
Well, I think it's still like hitting me the fact that now it's like my name, I'm an Olympian, is still kind
Yeah.
of like starting to seep in. I think the more people are like, "Oh my God, you're an Olympian," I'm like, "Oh yeah, like that's a thing." So it's just an evolving process, and I think for me, like as soon as so especially with these games, as soon as you're done playing, immediately after you're back home in Canada, right? So it was a really big high. You play all these games, and then like literally the next day you're flying and you're going back home.
And you're
So
watching
it's
now, being like, that's what I was just
yeah,
doing.
literally,
Part-
literally like I'm watching my like
yeah.
it's crazy. It's like
Yeah.
it's so quick the turnaround. So I feel like for myself, it's now that I'm officially an Olympian. It's realizing like what do I love, and I still love playing rugby. So I'm not done playing rugby. Um, I still know that there's opportunity to um, speak more, talk more, connect more with more people. I think that with the opportunity to be international and to be in more higher spaces, um, is to really integrate myself more and more in community. I think that through the year, I've been able to see a lot of people in different spaces, and the more that I can stay grounded, and check in with my teammates, check in with those around me, um, will better inform me on what is my next step. And I think I'm still also in school, so that's finishing up my degree at the same time, and still playing rugby, and just like finding different things in community that aren't part of the conversation. So I want to find who isn't in the conversation. How can I bring them in? So it's kind of what's
That's
next for me.
that sort of, be throughout your, like, all the different facets of your life, that it can be sparked and ignited in different ways. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And I think ambition is such a cool thing because I think, as you were saying, it's like a constant driver that like it's what's next. How can I elevate my game, my mind, my space, always. And with that, wanting to learn and be better, how do you deal with defeat?
Hmm. How do you deal with defeat? Well, I think, it's inherent in an athlete's process
Mm-hmm.
that you deal with defeat daily. There are constant setbacks and struggles and adversities that you're having to face, throughout training, that it sort of instills this grit or resilience in you so much that it becomes part of your story. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a strength for a lot of elite athletes, in that, you know, failure, if you will, is embraced as just the ultimate learning opportunity. And defeat is just easier to handle if you feel you've done everything you possibly can to prepare.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Scott was really a good teacher in that capacity. He often, reminded me that we wanted all of our competitors to be at their very best.
Mm-hmm.
He was able to objectively sort of step back and realize sometimes we weren't the best today. Or, that's the beauty of sport, is that it can go one way or another depending on the moment. And so I think defeat you know, it just becomes part of your story. And often, if you were to fast forward to a keynote speech that you might give 10 or 20 years down the road, those are the most interesting stories to tell. That's where the lessons are, and that's where the real growth happens.
Yeah, no, that's bang on. And I think, you know, it's